In this video, you'll see how to query resource configuration properties using AWS Config Advanced Query. With this feature, you can perform ad hoc queries against the current configuration state of your resources, retrieve resource metadata across multiple services from a single interface, and run the same query across multiple accounts and regions. Advanced Query is a capability of AWS Config that makes it easy to query the resource configuration properties of your AWS resources for audit, compliance, or operational troubleshooting. It can be used to perform ad hoc queries against the current configuration state of your resources using the AWS Config console or through APIs. To begin using it, let's navigate to AWS Config. In order to use Advanced Query, AWS Config must be enabled in your account, as well as in every account and region that contains resources you wish to query. For the purposes of this example, AWS Config has already been enabled accordingly. Let's navigate to Advanced Queries. AWS provides a set of sample queries. You can either use them as is or build on them to construct more complex queries. The language used for the queries is a subset of Structured Query Language, or SQL, select syntax. As you can see, the sample queries cover a range of different resource types and return a variety of different configuration properties and derived properties. Let's start by finding a simple query that returns a list of all running Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud or Amazon EC2 instances associated with our account. Here is the syntax for this query. Like all sample queries, it can be modified in the query editor. Let's add a field to the select clause to show a column displaying the region where each EC2 instance is located. Notice that the query scope setting specifies that this query will only return EC2 instances associated with the current account and region. Now run the query. The query is successfully executed. Let's scroll down and look at the results. In the output table, you can see the new AWS region column we added to the select clause of the query. It shows that all three EC2 instances returned are in the current region, US East 1. You can also click on the resource's ID field of any entry to see further details about the resource. If you have specified any rules pertaining to the resource type, you can also see this resource's compliance with them on this page. Let's return to the query editor. Let's change the query scope. To do so, you must first define an aggregator, which is a type of resource that collects configuration and compliance data from multiple sources. For our purposes, an aggregator that expands the domain to all regions has already been set up. Let's run the same query with this aggregator. As you can see, with the aggregator applied, the query has returned EC2 instances running in 4 different regions. If you wish, you can write your own queries from scratch rather than using the samples provided by AWS. Let's return to the Advanced Queries page and create a new query. Since the query language used is a subset of SQL, you can use basic SQL clauses like group by and order by to shape the results returned by a query. Let's build a query that returns the total number of EC2 instances in each region. First, apply the multi-region aggregator. Next, enter the query syntax. Now run the query. As you can see, this query has returned a count of the EC2 instances in each region. You can find a list of all the resource configuration properties you can use to formulate your own queries at the AWS Config Resource Schema GitHub repository. Let's take a look. Let's find the properties for EC2 instances. Now close out and return to the query editor. Let's look at one more sample query. This time, let's find a sample query that returns a count of both compliant and non-compliant resources. Run the query. As you can see, the query ran successfully, returning a count of resources grouped by compliance status. You've just seen how to query resource configuration properties using AWS Config Advanced Query. Thanks for watching. Now it's your turn to try.